Welcome back to the channel. I'm going to review a Criterion release today. I started some time ago, the plan at least, to review Criterion releases, starting with the very first release and working my way through those. It'll be a slow, probably painful process in some respects, because a lot of those titles are not really in the theme of my channel, which is horror, of course. But I'm going to go through those, and as I go through them, I'll post reviews occasionally. I'm going to start with the first film. I have reviews of other Criterions, by the way. I've got them in a playlist, so if you're interested, check those out. But let's start with the first film released by Criterion, and that is The Grand Illusion, 1937, John Renoir. Now, as you can obviously see, this is not a Criterion Blu-ray. The DVD, and I think if there was a Blu-ray, I don't know that I don't recall if there was or not. It's long out of print. So luckily, you can still see this film. This is a spectacular release from Studio Canal. Great picture quality, pristine. So in most cases, I'm probably not even going to be buying the Criterion specific release. If I can find it by some other distributor, I'll probably go that route. But at any rate, The Grand Illusion was Criterion's first release, and it's a war film. It's really a melodrama, to be honest with you. It's a story about two French pilots in World War I whose planes get shot down by the Germans, and they get captured and put in a German prisoner of war camp. That's kind of the stage that's set for this film. And what we have is not really a war film. It's a melodrama. It's about the characters and their what they lived through. They're in the prisoner of war camp. Their relationships between themselves, their relationships with the enemy, the Germans. It says a lot. This was made in 1937, I think, released in 37 or 38. So you're right before World War II, and the film deals a lot with anti-Semitism. One of the key characters he really is the main character, is a Jew prisoner of war, and the interaction between him and his other French captives is interesting. It's certainly an interesting take looking at it from today's modern eyes. But the problem with this film, even though I think it's technically a very beautifully done film, the camera work is incredible. It's well shot. Technically, I have no complaints about the film. I didn't like the film, and I didn't like the film because I don't think it put me in a position, or the characters in a position, of portraying anywhere near the realities of being a prisoner of war in a German camp, whether the World War I or World War II. This was more like a bunch of guys going off to a summer boys camp, if you will. I mean, they looked well fed throughout the film. They looked happy throughout the film. They were having good times. Their surroundings, their accommodations were pristine. I mean, it was the furthest thing you can possibly imagine from being a prisoner in a war camp. I mean, that whole setting was so unrealistic that it's hard for me to even buy into any of the kind of the challenges these characters are going through. So this thing has been bantied about as a masterpiece, and I think like Roger Ebert had it as one of the two films that he would take with him if he was going to be on a deserted island for the rest of his life. He would take two films, and this was one of them. I don't know what the second one was, but I don't see it. I just don't see. I think I understand why this is so popular. First of all, it's a French film. You know, anybody, we have kind of this prejudice about, particularly I think, film buffs. You know, oh, this is a great French masterpiece, a work of art. You know, because it's French. Well, that's hokey. I mean, that's just bullshit. The other thing I think that kind of drives people's affections for this film is it's the theme of the film is it's a pacifist film. It's about the humanitarianism. It's an anti-war film. The bottom line is it's anti-war, and I think this checks off a lot of boxes for people on the left that are probably anti-war, maybe even pacifists, and clicks all the boxes for the humanistic elements. But the problem is, and it's a French art film, so you know, there you go. It's got all the boxes are getting checked for this to be a quote unquote masterpiece. I think it's far from a masterpiece. I don't think it's shit. I think it's a technically well done film, but it's not a masterpiece by any stretch. It's only a masterpiece in the eyes of those, I think, that see that it checks off a lot of their philosophical boxes. I may be wrong about that, but that's my opinion. If you want to see a masterpiece, a prisoner of war masterpiece, go see 1973's Papillon, Steve McQueen. That's a masterpiece. That is a true film about being a prisoner of war and the trials and tribulations of what those guys go through. And when they finally escape, you're so empathetic to it because of what they've gone through. This is like, we're going to go to maybe it's not to this extreme, but we're going to go to the Hyatt in Las Vegas and be held up by some Germans. I mean, they're well fed, they're well taken care of, they're treated politely. So when they escape, it's like, I mean, what they were escaping to at the end was a far worse fate in some respects than what they had when they were living with the Germans. So the whole thing is completely unrealistic, and therefore I can't put myself in. I can't become attached to this or the characters just because of that. But it's not a bad film. Obviously it's a Criterion, and I don't think they've released any bad films that I'm aware of. But it's not a masterpiece. In fact, I'd probably only give it a 5.5, maybe a 6, and that's only because of the technical aspects. The camera works beautiful, the sets are beautiful, but the story is ridiculous, and the set the whole texture of the film is just ridiculous. It's unrealistic and unbelievable, and so I don't see it as it's certainly not one of the most haunting. It says it's one of the most haunting war films of all time. No, not even close. This is not a film I would ever want to go back to. If I wanted to watch a war film, this would never make the list. So, yeah, just because Jean Renoir directed it, and it's French, and it's an art film, and it's humanistic, and it's popularizing pacifism. Which, by the way, if you're a pacifist, I don't really even understand that concept, because it takes two to be a pacifist. You know, if you've got a very aggressive opponent that's looking to take over your land and annex your territories, and he's willing to kill you to do it. For example, say Iran or North Korea, or if you just lay down your arms and you show this as a sign of weakness to what is really a very militaristic, aggressive opponent, I think your pacifism is going to be in some trouble. I mean, throughout history, I think if you ask Neville Chamberlain, if you were able to dig him up and resuscitate Neville Chamberlain, you know, his appeasement approach didn't work too good in World War II with Hitler. So I don't think there's many examples of pacifism combating, totalitarianism that was a successful approach. But that's not really the purpose of this review, but people, it's appealing. It's appealing. It's anti-war. that does appeal to people, and I understand why. But the problem is there's another side of that. That other side isn't so pacifist, and if everybody was pacifist, then it would work, right? At any rate, not a good film by any stretch of the imagination, but in some circles a masterpiece. So that was kind of a little bit of a rant, I guess. That's about as much of a rant as you're ever going to see me get on this channel. So I'm not a fan. I think Papillon is if you want to talk about masterpieces, certainly Papillon would be, from a prisoner of war camp themed film, then Papillon would certainly fit the bill. This does have some special features. It's got 2 introductions. This Studio Canal release does not have a commentary track. I think there is a release that has a kind of a scholarly commentary track. Unfortunately, this release does not have it, but you can see from the special features there what we've got. And it's also got the story behind this film, how it was found and how it was brought back to life, if you will, is more interesting than the film itself. So when the Russians defeated Hitler in World War II and made it to Berlin first, right? They took everything in the film archive, the German film archive, which the Germans had confiscated this film when they invaded in Paris, and took this film back to Berlin with, I guess, a bunch of other films as well. So this film made its way from Paris to Berlin and then Russia, Moscow, before finally, I think in 1958 or maybe in the 60s, they were able to find the original camera negative and restore it. So an interesting trip for this film. But I don't really understand why this was such a confrontational film for any kind of regime, whether it be the Nazis or the Russians at that time, because it portrays it actually portrays being under the yoke of Germans and as kind of a wonderful thing almost. I mean, so it was almost a promotion. It should have been, maybe the Nazis should have used this film as a promotional tool. Hey, look, if you surrender to us, you're going to live great. You're going to be well fed. You're always going to have nice clothes. We're going to give you nice accommodations. You're going to be able to play games and sing music with your friends and all that good stuff. So it should have been, to me, this should have been a promotional rather than a banned film. All right, enough rant. That is The Grand Illusion, the first release from Criterion, and the title Grand Illusion is an apt title, I would think, because this is a very big illusion. If you've seen Grand Illusion or you have some other thoughts about it, feel free to leave it in the comment section below, and I appreciate you watching. Thanks.